I think right from the start in chess, one really should be considering what opening to play, which opening is best for you compared to all the other openings that are available. So what opening to play with is the first thing to consider in chess. When first looking at chess, one needs to decide really what the aim would be in the beginning. Now, some beginners do tend to believe that the way to outwit their opponent is to do a surprise opening, and often for that the g2, g4 pawn and b2, b4. This can be considered as unorthodox openings, and often these pawns are used as lures, so that hoping that these pawns will be taken in compensation for something else. White will also perhaps capture a pawn here, and or on this side white will often capture a pawn here. So there's a compensational effort there. The trouble really with the g2, g4 pawn move is it often leaves white's kingside pawn structure unhealthy, and and especially if white loses this pawn eventually, then if white castles later on, the pawn structure is damaged. You know, there's no pawns there anymore. White's in trouble, and so most professionals will avoid that unorthodox opening. Anybody who wants to try to surprise their opponent with an unorthodox move early on, it really should consider something else instead of these two. Something like g2, g3 and b2, b3, and this can have a much better effect. If we look at this move, for example, white's pawn structure is pretty solid. White has a very good pawn structure and some good defense. So the g2, g3 move is very good. It offers development, and white has castled and can start now working on control of the center. And it's same with the improved b2, b3 opening. White can immediately start putting pressure on this piece without actually losing a pawn. And that's roughly how that opening would shape up some of the time. Popular line of play. And good moves to consider also is these two moves. So we've looked at unorthodox openings, two of them, realized their flaws early on, and made them more orthodox. But they're still really not the strongest openings. Really what one needs to do when considering a strong opening is to go for central control, to consider basic chess fundamentals like central control, development of the major pieces, castling safely, and getting open rook files, meanwhile holding a good pawn structure all the way through. In order to do that, we need to go for some common openings that are played by a lot of the Grandmasters. The reason being because they're effective. The English opening brings some control, can advance here and can attack a piece here. Now we're looking at central control, so we want to look at the effect of a pawn move on the center, and that would be the effect there. we're really focusing on these 4 squares. The basic idea, hopefully, is to get white's e-pawn onto this guy here, onto this square. And the idea for black is perhaps to get the dr e-pawn onto this square here. So these are the primal 2 key squares. For white, we need to be opportunatively looking at getting a piece on there, and yet blocking black's advancement to the e4 square. And to do this, we can pick quite a few moves. Now we've looked at the c2, c4. Now let's look at this move. If we look at this move, usefully on these 4 squares, white can advance to this and can threaten the development of black's piece, and can later bring the e2 to e4 pawn into position. And it can possibly advance that pawn to this square. So that's a good move. So we've looked at the English opening, the queen's pawn and the king's pawn, e2, e4, and that rather immediately can advance to this square and can threaten the d file, the d pawn, on the 4 useful squares. So that's rather an immediate central controlling maneuver. Also the opening, which is the g2 to f3, that's rather a useful one, and one can develop onto these, or can actually block black's development on the e5. So all these openings have a say in good central control, and all of them should be considered. I think Kramnik will often move this guy first. Bobby Fischer pretty much primarily always chose the king's pawn e2, e4, and Spassky used to choose the opening too. Karpov and Kasparov often played the d2 to d4, the queen's pawn opening. So that will give you an idea of perhaps what to choose there. Now another thing is, when looking at the English opening, usually the next piece that will be played is d2, d4. So we get in quite some aggressive play on these 2 squares here, and likewise with the queen's pawn. After that, the c pawn will come up, so it's often the same result. With the king's pawn, though, it's more immediate. It can advance this pretty quickly, and it can threaten this square pretty quickly. It depends what black's response is going to be. But all in all, the king's and the queen's pawn are both very good openings, and it's those 2 that I would strongly recommend for central control. The common openings, and both powerful and strong, solid.